Over the last 10 weeks, we've been going through the 12 steps. This coming week, we're on step 11 that says, sought through prayer and meditation to improve your conscious contact with God, praying only for the knowledge of His will and the power to carry that out. What does that mean to you, Dan?
Step 11, what it comes down to me is the personal relationship and the more intentional contact with the Father. Kind of what I think of as like the satellite in recovery. We get sober and it's just full of debris and all this junk, and through the process of the steps we're removing and cleaning the slate back to normal, and as we get to this spot and it's like now we're actually able to speak and hear from God, and it's keeping that connection clean and continuing to go back to the Father and just have that personal time with Him and hear what He's saying. That's
good. Eric?
Step 11 for me is a big part is how I got to the prayer and meditation. I used a formula I learned in Teen Challenge called ACTS. It's the ACT prayer. It's adoration, confession, and then thanksgiving. And basically when I pray, I just go in that order: adoration of saying who He is and recognizing Him for all the things He's done. And then confession, where you admit your wrongs and your sins. And then thanksgiving is just praising Him for everything He did. And I just run through that 3 simple step prayer, and whenever I feel need, a lot of times in the morning or at night, and then yeah.
That's good. Linda?
I begin each day with prayer and meditation and journaling and reading the Word, and it's being very intentional about that, and I just like Him, trying to be close to God in any way that I can.
That's good. What about you, Mark?
Step 11 for me taught me pretty much how to get closer to God, but it also helped me be able to build relationships with my daughters and everything. Now I'm praying with them every night, getting them involved with God. But with helping me grow closer to my Father and gain love from Him, I'm also able to dish out the love to my daughters that they never had. So
that's good. What about you, Beth?
Seeking for me was very difficult. So seeking God just in general is something that is very dear to my heart. Just brings me to that place of peace, and it helps me pray and brings me basically to my knees. And it helps me to go to step 12. It's part of the whole process of all of the steps. So it's one of the main core of my program is step 11.
That's awesome. Tonight we're going to talk about step 11 with the tools from AA as well as NA. It's going to be awesome. I appreciate the people that volunteer to do that, because it's always good, especially proven people with fruit. Tonight you saw a lot of fruit. You saw results that this program does work if you work it. So Lord, I thank You for another day above ground and out of prison. Lord, I thank You for the literature in AA and NA and Your Word that allows us to grow closer to You. And the closer we are to You, Lord, the better our lives become. And Lord, I just ask that You take over and think through my mind and speak through my vocal cords and do what You got to do in a quick manner so we can leave differently than we came, including myself. In Your name we pray, amen. So I've been using this illustration of props, and that's what I liked about Dan. He had his prayer box. You have no clue, 16 years of different information that he hasn't lost sight of. And repetition is important because at times I'm not a fast learner. I'm stubborn in my flesh. And I need to hear things. Often the Bible says that faith comes by hearing the message. And, we need to continue to hear it because we're also hearing different messages throughout our day. Why is it that we're still hearing different messages from our past, which doesn't allow us to focus and participate in our present, which really more or less robs us of our future? So I've been using this illustration of the main floor of the sanctuary as our addiction. And in our addiction, there's so many different consequences. I was telling the ladies in prison yesterday that none of us got caught for everything they did. And then they got real nervous with somebody listening in on the meeting. And I had to giggle with them because I had no nerves flowing in me when I'm sitting in a prison with people like myself. They call us convicts and felons, and I felt totally comfortable. And I got real nervous when I saw the guard walk around and check the doors locked. That makes no sense after all these years. So I've learned that old habits die hard. I was the type of guy that was 2 years sober and got a new job, and I had to take a UA to get the new job. I knew I'd been sober for 2 years, but I still thought I'd fail the UA. So I was so successful at failing. And I had to get over that. So the main floor here is your addiction with all the consequences. And that's why you got to take a step out, and you're powerless over what you've done. And your life clearly has become unmanageable. And as Rod's sponsor said, when he sees somebody really grasp that first step, you can see the excitement. And then you came to believe that a power greater than yourself could restore you to sanity. Now, if anybody spends any time with me away from church, they'll know that I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. But I've studied this information. I'm embedded and I'm coded in the 12 steps. I've reviewed it, just like you said. I just didn't read them, I worked them. So with even a dope fiend mind, I can recite them to the best of my ability. And if I get a word wrong, I'm not a failure. A lot of us think we're perfectionists, so we won't do anything unless we can do it perfect. That's an excuse. You just don't want to do it. So I came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. I saw that power working in each and every one of you. I think I'm still a little bit insane, and then I made a decision. Now I look at the broadness of the sanctuary floor with all the consequences of my unmanageability, and now I'm on the third step, and I made a decision. A decision isn't a word. A decision you'll see in the literature, how would you know if a person has made a decision to turn their will and their lives over to the care of God as they understood Him? You would know that if they took a fourth step. If they haven't worked a fourth step after making a decision, they most likely have not made a decision. So the fourth step says made. Now this is scary. I could tell you I turned my will and my life over to the care of God. I could tell you verbally that I came to believe that a power greater than myself. I could say, yes, I'm powerless and I'm manageability. But this is why we all get stuck here, right? Because you got to actually produce some work. Well, I've been stuck on my fourth step for 6 months. No, that's just not wanting to do your fourth step. A fourth step does not take 6 months. Quite frankly, I just did a fifth step with an individual that's not even in recovery last night. And she did it in a week. She was eager to do it, and she doesn't have something running through her veins that could kill her. So you made a decision, searching and fearless. Like Beth said in the video, the seeking was difficult. So to search deep within your soul, which your soul is your mind, your will, your emotions, and your intellect, to take a strong look at ourselves is difficult. So we got to be fearless and searching. Then we admit to God, who already knows. God's God. He sees everything. He knows what we're thinking. He knows what we're feeling. But there's something powerful as a parent, as a child admits something to him. As a parent myself, I know my kids have done some things. They don't know that I know that they've done them. But when they admitted that to me, there was freedom and our relationship was back intact. But as long as they didn't admit it, see, this is the second time we admit. The first step we admit we're powerless. Now we admit to God, another human being, and ourselves the exact nature of our wrongs. But we've learned how to get exact by being searching and fearless down here. So now I'm not going to, I told the ladies in prison, I said, if you're in here telling all your road dogs in here on who you used to know, you didn't know anybody. Because if you knew anybody and if you're anything of magnitude in the streets, you don't talk about who you know. But if you're throwing around names, I ran with this guy, I ran with that guy, if you were really running that deep, you don't talk about who you rolled with. That's foolishness. Say foolishness. Foolishness. So now I'm doing that. So now I'm beginning to compile a list of the things that I become entirely ready to have God remove. I'm not just sick and tired, I'm sick of me. And if I'm sick of me, just like, you saw loyalty there, but there are people that do have to walk away from us. So I asked, as I did that fifth step last night with that individual, I said, how have these affected your character? So we understand that we become entirely ready to have God remove my defects of character because I was a liar. I didn't want to lie. I wanted to stop lying, but once I found out that I wanted to stop lying, I still lied. So I didn't have enough power within myself to stop myself from manipulating and lying. So I needed to invite God, who I turned myself over in the third step, into my life so he can help me. And I got to tell him, I'm ready for you to take this. Just like Beth said, she cries, she gets sad, and then she lets it go, Becca. She cries, she gets sad. See, it's not, letting go is not an event, it's a process. Because stuff gets on your plate on a daily that you got to let go. And now we come here, and we're sitting here, and now I've had to learn a different degree of humility, and I have to humbly ask God to remove my shortcomings. Well, I figured out what my shortcomings were when I became entirely ready, and when I admitted it, I started to see, when I wrote it down on paper, when you write something that's inside of you and you put it down outside of you, it loses its power. And you see it on paper, and it's like, this is what I've been entrapped with for 25 years. This resentment, this fear. So now I'm looking at my shortcomings, and I'm sitting here, and I'm like, God, how am I going to stay sober feeling like this? How am I going to stay sober acting like this? I said that to the girls yesterday. I said, I'm a dope fiend, but if the dope is gone and I'm still a fiend, that's a problem. That's no different than alcoholism. I mean, the ism is what gets you to the alcohol. The ism is what we deal with in the steps. It's like Jim Swanson said when he got his multiple-year medallion. He said, the what is addiction, but why? These 7 steps tell you why. They tell us why we think and what it is. But now I'm on a journey, and if you look, those steps are a little different. They have a little more plane there, but now this is starting to go straight up vertical. You don't see many people in the 12-step rooms that ever get here. It's kind of scary up here. But I can see my consequences differently. When I'm right on my consequences on the Sanctuary 4 and my unmanageability, it's a lot bigger. But the more I am elevated by working the 12 steps, my problems become smaller because I'm being lifted higher towards God. So now I'm going on to a whole different playing field on what it is that I asked Doug to tell me actually what step 9 and 10 were, and it's way too high. So now I'm on step 8. And step 8 has to do with willingness. Say willingness. See, so many people without a sponsor or maybe a sponsor that's afraid to tell them what time. This step has nothing to do other than willingness. To be willing to make amends to anyone that you had harmed. And you begin to compile that list. And just like the 4th step, people get stuck on this. Well, how am I supposed to remember everybody I hurt? Well, you're not supposed to. You're just supposed to write down whatever's in your memory. And God will add to it later. God will add who you're supposed to write to, but the goal is by doing this, you don't have to add to your list. But then we get to the 9th step, and we make direct amends. That's scary. But you know what? Those problems on the Sanctuary floor are not that difficult. And then I become entirely ready. Continued to take personal inventory. And when I was wrong, I promptly admit it. You look more scared than I do. Now I'm getting scared. But the 11th step says, sought through prayer and meditation. So, you know what? I needed a lot of prayer to admit when I was wrong. I needed a lot of prayer to make that direct amends. I needed a lot of prayer to become willing to even make the list. I needed a lot of prayer to more or less go to God and say, God, I need you to remove those shortcomings. I needed a lot of prayer because I'm not good at looking at myself to become entirely ready to have God remove my defects of character. I needed a lot of prayer before I went in with my 4-step lifts to reveal myself. I don't like to reveal myself. I had to reveal myself to another human being, the exact nature of my wrong. I needed a lot of prayer to search and become fearless. I needed prayer, God. I didn't really understand you, but I will turn my life over to you, because when I turned my life over to crack cocaine, it made me do some crazy things. I needed a lot of prayer to come to believe. I needed your help for me to believe in you. Have you ever asked God to help you believe in him? I needed a lot of prayer to really look at the floor of the sanctuary of the unmanageability. So by now, I should know how to seek. By now, I should know through prayer and meditation. To me, prayer is talking to God. Meditation oftentimes, and it's not always like this, is listening. But I'm here to tell you, as a pastor of a fast-moving church, as the founder of this program, I don't know if it's always God. And that's why I need a sponsor like this, that's not emotionally attached to me and my situation and my feeling, that can bring me clarity directly from God. Because if I'm talking about an issue I got with my kids or my finances or my exes or anything, I'm emotionally a mess. But I go to him with it. He's removed from the emotions. Doesn't mean he doesn't care for me. He can give me a logical answer. And that's typically where I get my meditation, because God always works through confirmation. You should hear the women in our prayer circle pray for Leanne. She prays for us often, and Leanne comes to me every Sunday because we just prayed for what you talked about. God always works through confirmation. You just ask him, and I guarantee you somebody will show up and give you the answer. But watch who your someones are. Because we are known to go to people to co-sign us. And so, but this is what I love, because this is probably why I had to go through 11 treatments. Just like Rod, I read the steps, but I didn't work them. Because it says, praying only for the knowledge. First it says, to improve your conscious contact with God. Too many of us in this room says, I'm good. I know what I need to do. No, it's about improving. You're never good. You know, there are no limits with God. So the goal of the 11th step is to continue to improve our conscious contact. Conscious means you have to be intentional, like Linda said. You're not going to naturally wake up and just want to pray, unless you're Dan. But he's been doing this for 16 years. So he's developed a habit of doing it. Habits take time. So what it means is that you know, typically I hit snooze. Then I check my phone. Then I hit snooze again. Then by then my phone is ringing. So you have to be intentional about that conscious contact. Now remember how intentional you were with God in your conscious contact before that court date? When you thought you were going to take your last breath with an overdose? Before the social worker decided if you could see your kids again? Before you went in for that loan? Whatever your story is, we know how to have conscious contact, but can we continue to have conscious contact? Praying only for the knowledge of his will. Now remember, in the third step, you turned your will over to the care of him, but what you find, and you're going to see in the literature tonight, that there's a lot of blockage. And that's what steps really 4 through 10 are about, is removing the blockage, that it becomes about him and not you. Praying only for the knowledge of his, not to get because too many of us have gotten things prematurely that God didn't give us and we didn't know how to manage them. I see it all the time. Praying only for the knowledge of his will and the power to carry that out. Because once you start walking in his will for your life, you're going to need his power to do it. Because it does not come natural. But once you break that pattern, because all of us are creatures of patterns, you can be like Dan is. You can truly, it's authentic joy. It's not manufactured. And it says now in AA 12 and 12, it says prayer and meditation are spiritual means, are principal means of conscious contact with God. And when we turn away from meditation and prayer, we likewise deprive our minds, emotions, intuitions, or vitally needed support. See, what I've learned is oftentimes my mind is a mess. Oftentimes I'm on an emotional roller coaster. Yes, I do have extreme bipolar. So I have extreme lows, and I have extreme highs. But I couldn't seem to ever find the balance in the middle of those things. And so my mind oftentimes is trouble. I'm walking in an emotional roller coaster, and my intuitions are off. And when my intuitions are off, I usually operate in false assumptions. See, that's how I lived 35 to 37 years of my life. I made decisions on assumptions. And I never asked for clarity. It says, as the body can fail its purpose for lack of nourishment, so can the soul. I said it earlier. The soul that we all have is mind, will, emotions, and intellect. The soul is what needs to be connected to God. It says we all need the light of God's reality. So when you're not talking and meditating with God, your reality changes. Your reality changes, and your check this out, your reality, the nourishment of His strength and the atmosphere of His grace. See, when you are connected to God, you can experience those three things. I'm an atmosphere guy. I'm all about, it's very difficult for me to be around doom and gloom. And quite frankly, if you smoked crack or did dope or gambled or did whatever you did like I did, you should be grateful on a daily. Because you shouldn't be here. The atmosphere, what do people get when they get you? What do you bring when you walk into the room? Is it an attitude of gratitude, or is it like, why the heck do I have to be here again? And check out what the literature says. It says there is a direct link among self-examination, meditation, and prayer. Taken separately, these practices can bring much relief and much benefit. See, meditation and prayer bring relief, but we're not used to that. We're used to getting our relief from things that were killing us. And now the program has taught us in the 11th step that you can get a different type of relief that will actually elevate you and be you a man or woman of purpose. It says, but when they logically related to the interwoven, the result is an unshakable foundation for life. That's what the steps are. They're building a foundation for life. As we've seen, self-searching is the means we bring a new vision, action, and grace to bear upon the dark and negative side of our natures. It is a step of development of the kind of humility that makes it possible for us to receive God's help. Some of us get here and we don't even think we need help. We think our problem was dope. I mean, I'll need God and your help the rest of my life. It says, yet it is only a step. We will have to go further. I mean, that's why it says continue to do these things and really seek God to improve your conscious contact. It says meditation is something which can always be further developed. Now, meditation is different from everybody, but meditation is very difficult for me. I got extreme ADD. Extreme ADD. So meditation is more difficult possibly for myself than you, but I still had to learn how to meditate. It has no boundaries, either the width or height. But its object is always the same, to improve the conscious contact with God and His grace, wisdom, and love. And let's always remember that meditation in its reality is intensely practical. It's not as difficult as we think. My therapist used to tell me, spend 10 minutes a day in silence. I couldn't do it. I said, I'm not there yet. I can't do it. I'm reaching for stuff. I hear stuff and stuff like that. He says, then spend 2 minutes. So I started to take direction on what meditation really was. It says, now what about prayer? Prayer is the raising of the heart and mind to God. And in a sense, it includes meditation. Prayer is commonly understood as a petition to God. Having opened our channel as best we can, we try to ask for the right things. See, oftentimes we're asking God for the wrong things. It goes that we others are in our greatest need. So we're supposed to pray for the right things for ourselves and others in the greatest need. I think God may know what we need more than we do. It goes on to say, just saying it over and over again will often enable us to clear channel choked up with anger, fear, frustration, misunderstanding, and permit us to return to the surest help of all, our search for God's will, not our own, in the moment of stress. I don't think you can say 2 words at the same time. I don't think you can think 2 thoughts at the same time. Try to say start and stop at the same time. Ready? 1, 2, 3. So you have to replace that negative with a positive, and you have to be conscious about it. Because if you're fantasizing about the old life or old girl or old boy and you're consumed with it, you have to force your mind to think about something else, and you're going to need God's power to do it. See, we can't think about 2 things at once. We can't say 2 things at once. These critical moments, if we remind ourselves that it is better to comfort than to be comforted, to understand other than to be understood, to love rather than to be loved. We'll be following the intent to love. See, a lot of us, we want to be understood. A lot of us want to be loved. A lot of us, but whenever I'm down and out and I feel like I need encouragement, I go encourage somebody. Because when I release what I need, I open myself up to receive it. So I'm releasing what I need to somebody else, but my natural mind is like, come on, just fill me up. Just give me something. Don't you notice that I'm hurting? But that's not what the 11th step just said of AA. It says if you need something, go give it. And that's Luke 6:38 in the Bible. What you give, you will receive, but God won't give it to you. You know, so I wasn't having the greatest day, but after I got out of that prison yesterday, I was having a great day. Because I sowed encouragement, but I needed it when I walked in there. And usually it's the opposite, and that's why Jesus says, the last will be first. That's why our first thought is always wrong. The majority of the time. So NA says, throughout our recovery, one of the things which stands out as a result of working the steps is our success in building a relationship with God of our understanding. But here's the thing about we do God just like we do everything. We use God when we need Him. We use a program like Serenity Village when we need it. As soon as we don't need God or Serenity Village, we're out. And we don't typically go out with dignity or class. We just go. What I've learned about takers, they give nothing and expect everything. See, I've learned that what I needed to learn or unlearn first is that, I'm tired of rebuilding, so I'm okay with God while I need Him, and I'll reestablish my relationship because it's easy to give God everything when you got nothing. But as soon as I get something, I'm not so concerned about reestablishing that relationship or even keeping it established and maintaining and growing and improving my conscious contact because God, you're just like my bail bondsman. I needed you. I don't need you anymore. I'm good. I don't need to improve. I'm not going to be conscious about it. I'm going to do what I want until I fall flat on my face again, and then I'm going to come asking. And I always come asking, and I never come giving. And if that's the life that you choose to live, you will always be in lack. You will always be in detox. You probably won't live as long as you wanted to. Because when it comes to God, when it comes to spirituality, we have to do typically what we don't want to do in order to do what we want to do. But if you do what you want to do, you're going to end up doing what you don't want to do. And isn't that why we all came here? Because we were tired of doing what we were doing? I mean, it says, we continued by working the following steps. Each one of them was designed to clear away the barriers, the fears, the resentments, the character defects, the unforgiveness that we would experience in cleaning our side of the street in a step 9. Those are barriers, and it says, might stand between our higher power and ourselves. As a result, we are open to receive our higher power's love and guidance directly into our lives. It says, we no longer shy away from spiritual growth. Because it's become so essential to maintaining. So many of us know how to get sober, but we don't know how to stay sober. And I've fallen into that trap too, only going to my sponsor when I had a problem. What about the regular contact on a daily, even when you're having a great day? Wouldn't that actually train you to do the same thing with God if you do it with another human being? But it says, essential to maintaining the peace of mind we found. Perhaps the beginning of our recovery, we worked the steps because we were in pain and afraid we would relapse if we didn't. See, pain is always a motivator. But do you work the steps when you're not in pain? Do you have a conscious contact when you're not in pain? It says we should remember that step 11 asks us to pray only, say only. For the knowledge of God's will and the power to carry it out. Well, where I learned God's will was not just in this book. It was the relationship I had with my sponsor. Because how am I supposed to know what God's will is for my life? Here's a trick for the people that complicate this. Start with what God's will isn't for your life. God's will is not for you to be depressed. God's will is not for you to be a drunk and an addict and a porn freak. Oh, it's quiet now. And a gambler or whatever your gig is and walk around as a ticking time bomb. Just start with what God's will is not. It says, though the temptation to pray for a particular result may be great, we must resist the urge to do so if we want to experience the rewards of the 11th step. That is a profound sentence right there. Praying for specific solutions to specific problems is not the answer, it says. Because you're trying to put your solution over what God's could be. And if you limit yourself to go solve something within your own carnal mind, and God had something totally else in mind. Check out what the literature says now. Practicing the 11th step involves daily discipline. None of us are good at it. That's why we need a sponsor. Of prayer and meditation. This discipline reinforces our commitment to recovery, to a living a new way of life, and developing further our relationship with our higher power. Through the daily practice, we begin to glimpse at the limitless freedom. I'm telling you, there are no limits to God. We can be afforded through God's love. The NA Basic Text. Many of us really begin to appreciate our recovery when we get to the left. See, you're either appreciating or depreciating. And anything that appreciates, you invest in it. The question I have for you tonight is your recovery depreciating? Are you losing your momentum? And I love what it says here. It's so profound to me what the text is saying here, because I truly do appreciate my recovery. I truly do appreciate you, and I appreciate the steps. And you would work something that you appreciate. If you go to work tomorrow and you don't appreciate your job, you're probably not going to give your job your all. If you don't appreciate the relationships you're in, you're probably going to be really missing within your relationships. And what it says, that's why, let me ask, I don't know if she's still here, I think she might have left, but I don't think the gal that gave Becca her 1 year is even in recovery. I don't think she's an addict. But did you hear what she said? You have helped me get to know God. This is much bigger than anything you think it is. Who you can touch and help. And what it says is so profound. And I love the literature where it says it here. It says, some of the things that didn't work for us in the past might work today. The reason why they didn't work, we didn't work them. It says, we'll take a fresh look at each day with an open mind. We know that if we pray for God's will, we will receive the best for us regardless of what we think. Our thinking always gets in the way. This knowledge is based on our belief and experience as recovering addicts. We learn to be careful of praying for specific things. We pray that God will show us His will and that He will carry that out. In some cases, He makes His will so obvious. Now, let me just share a secret with you. God's will is for you to work the steps. That's kind of obvious. God's will is for you to have a sponsor. Pretty obvious. So why aren't we doing it? So it says it's pretty obvious to us. We have little difficulty seeing it, but why are some of us tonight not seeing it? It's obvious. You got out of rehab. What you learned in rehab said get a sponsor, work the steps, maybe go to transitional housing. You're going to have to work this for the rest of your life, one day at a time. Pretty obvious. So why aren't we doing it? It's not because we're bad people. It says, but here's the answer. And others are egos. How can a guy like me 14 years ago have an ego with everything I owned in a hefty garbage bag? But I had one. It really was fear. It was self-centered fear. And this is what it's saying here. Our egos are self-centered, that we won't accept God's will for us without another struggle or surrender. So we got to go relapse again. We got to lock ourselves up again. We got to go to detox again to really get enough humility. We find ourselves praying because it brings us peace and restores our confidence and courage. It helps us to live the life free of fear and distrust. When we remove our selfish motives and pray for guidance, we find feelings of peace and serenity. How is it that the majority of my life I only was at peace when I was locked up? I just went through all heck and back in my addiction, went to treatment, and within a week I'm at total peace. But the less accountability that I got when I got out of treatment and I didn't want anybody in my business, I was not at peace anymore. I don't want to live a life that I got to lose everything to be at peace anymore. I want to be at peace with abundance. I want to be at peace with all these things. And it says, when we first come to the program, we usually ask for a lot of things that seem to be important. And we need this for our needs. As we grow spiritually and find a power greater than ourselves, we begin to realize that as long as our spiritual needs are met, our living problems are reduced to the point of comfort. We are able to set aside some of our personal preferences. Well, it's just not for me. That Pastor Jeff, he's loud. It's 8:07 for God's sakes. Do you know what I have to do after this? I'd like to know. Personal preferences. My personal preference was sitting in a closet smoking crack. I don't know what yours was, but the thing is, what you got to, what do we value? God's will for us becomes our own true will for ourselves. This happens as an intuitive manner that cannot be adequate and explained in words. Somebody asked me at the prison, when did you get it? I couldn't tell her. It wasn't a moment. I can't recall it, but something changed because I didn't quit. I didn't stop working the steps. I didn't stop calling my sponsor. But when it took, it took. And it doesn't matter how long it took, as long as it took. So you never know when the miracle is going to happen. Robin said it today. If you don't believe in miracles, stand up. And she's going to get her 2 years. Let's give her a hand. See, people are going to believe in miracles because they're going to see you. Just like Rod's wife. She believes in miracles now. She's got her husband back. See, you are the miracle, and you can perform miracles. And what a life that is. And it says it right now. Check this out. It's all right for us to admit powerless because God is powerful enough to help us stay clean and to enjoy spiritual progress. God is helping us to get our house in order. We are thankful for His steps because we begin to get what is best for us. Sometimes we prayed for our own wants and got trapped in what we got. I thank God for unanswered prayers. Some of you men have moved home under the sound of my voice. I love you dearly, but once you moved home, it was too early. And it goes on to say we pray and get something, then we have to pray for its removal because we couldn't handle it. We begin to pray only for God's will for us. This way we are getting only what we are capable of handling. Everybody wants to own a business till you own a business. So you got to put everything you own on the line so payroll is met. See, it says we are able to respond to it and handle it because God helps us prepare. This life is always about preparing for the next thing. If you get something prematurely, if you bust ahead of God, you're going to lose it anyway. I used to say this to myself all the time when I wanted to go home early. It's hard for me to be away from home, but what's going to be harder for my kids to talk to me through glass or go to the gravesite to talk to me. So either way, there's going to be pain. There was pain when I dropped my 2 kids off that 14 years ago. They wouldn't let me see them without a DNA sample and social workers present in the room when I had to visit my kids 14 years ago. That was painful. But it was just as painful to say goodbye when I dropped them off at college last week. So I had to learn how to deal with pain. It's painful to say goodbye to your 19 and 20-year-old and worry about what kind of friends they're going to meet and who they're going to hang out with and if they're going to be accepted and will they be around the right people and will the right people come and how am I going to afford this? I learned all this in these rooms. These rooms are much more than sobriety. I love the 12 steps. And as an attitude of surrender and humility, we approach this step again and again to receive the gift of knowledge and strength from the God of our understanding. Without this step, it is unlikely that we could experience a spiritual awakening, practice spiritual principles in our lives, and carry a sufficient message. Could anybody else get sober work in your program? Could anybody else get sober work in your program? I want to be walking in a sufficient message to attract others to recovery. There is a spiritual principle of giving away what we have been given in Narcotic Anonymous in order to keep it. I've said it, you cannot keep what you have unless you give it away. What you have isn't yours anyways. What you have is a gift from God for you to give to somebody else. And God is so gracious, if you do that, you're always going to have what you need. I never hold on to anything. Where we're going to be blessing people at magnitudes that you have never seen. Because God entrusts people that if it can't flow through you, it will not continue to go to you. That's the bottom line truth. That's the bottom line truth. So a lot of us ask what the will of God is for our lives. It tells us in 1 Thessalonians 5:16 through 18. Rejoice always, pray continually. Be grateful you're sober. Be grateful you're above ground. Stand up, brother. Wrote me that letter and gave me that gift card. Stand up. I gave this guy, yes, you. I gave him a job while he was in treatment. He worked his butt off. God elevated him into another position. After he left our company, he made a point to come shake my hand at the top of those stairs and gave me a hug. He's a big guy. He almost crushed me. But I know I got a friend for life because before he knew who I was and I knew who he was, I put my neck out on the line for him. And once he saw me put my neck out for him, he put it out for me. He wrote me a letter. He gave me a gift card. And it ain't even about that. But this man knows that he didn't get to where he is by his own. You're a champion. You motivate me. God bless you. And the best is yet to come. So we got to rejoice always, pray, give thanks in all circumstances. Give thanks for your problems. Not, give thanks in them, not for them. It says that is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. I'm thankful for my addiction. If I wouldn't have lost everything, this program would have never started because I would have had to raise my kids. I'm grateful for my timeouts. I'm grateful for my debt at the time. I'm grateful for all the people that walked away from me because they hadn't, I still would have used them. I said that to the women in the prison last night. I'm grateful for my addiction. I'm grateful for it because I assure you I would not be serving God at the level I am if I wasn't a crackhead. I would not be giving like I am unless I had lost everything. I love you more than you ever will know what love is. I study for you every week. I prepare, and you keep me in this literature. You keep me sober. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to teach you for 14 years. Because without you allowing me to teach you, I probably wouldn't be in this literature. I'd be worried about a job and money. So God bless you.